you've made a link, Aodhán, between sort of single-sex education and toxic masculinity. Where do you see it something coming in say an all-boys environment?
Yeah, look,
if we're talking about
if we're talking about gender inequality or toxic masculinity, it's probably unfair to make an absolute link between one facet of Irish society and that. But I think we have to be realistic about what are the most gendered environments that we have constructed, and these are contrived constructions. These all boys or all girls environments. We don't have all boys or all girls creches or early learning environments. We don't have all boys or all girls universities or further colleges of education. It's only in primary and secondary schools where we contrive this scenario where they must be separate. So in that environment of an all boys environment, I know just from my own experience what guys can be like together. I think you are more likely to tackle toxic masculinity in a gender equality based scenario. And I'd take issue with some of what's been said. I mean, I think we can absolutely trust the teachers of Ireland to deal with whatever student is reluctant to come forward or is shy or is not speaking or fulfilling their potential in the classroom. I'd also say this much about gender stereotypes. It has been shown that in certain schools that have of one gender or the other, it does lead to restricted subject choice. That a wider variety of subjects aren't available because it's an all-girls school or all-boys school. There are some girls' schools and boys' schools who will reject this and say it's not the case in there. But in the general sense, it has been the case.
In the area of like art and drama,
home economics, home economics for boys, STEM subjects for girls, sport, etc.
Do you find that from your experience? Was that the case? Has that been the case with your kids?
I think what Aodhán's raised, those points are really relevant. I think the whole idea of subjects, but also extracurricular activities and kind of the whole ethos of schools largely, it revolves around the gender of the children who attend, because there tends to be more demand. And if you're looking at single-sex schools, we have moved to a point where we're championing girls to do STEM, to do activities that were traditionally associated with boys, to aim for careers that were traditionally associated with men. But we haven't yet really maybe appreciated the value of the carer or caring roles or anything like that in men and in boys. We haven't done the reverse. We don't champion activities and interests that are traditionally associated with girls and boys. So we haven't actually managed to do that. And we're not likely to do that if we keep our schools separate and apart like that. And I have 6 sons, so even anecdotally, I could tell they're so different. I don't actually accept what Barbara's saying there in terms of boys learn a certain way and girls learn a certain way. That's kind of perhaps just it's stereotyping.
What about this idea that you hear that, parents may opt for a single-sex school for their daughter because girls do better in single-sex schools?
And I have a girl, and she went to a single-sex school, and again, it was the same reason. It was because it was a local school, and that's why she went there. And I can understand that. There is research showing that girls do better in single-sex schools, but school, academically in single-sex schools, but school is about so much more than education, and it is that only environment where we have the sexes separated in that way. And it's during the formative years that are so important that they learn about each other, they learn the challenges of each other. It is more complex. I do think misogyny and toxic masculinity, it's much more complex than just the schools, and we can't
and the issue of academic prowess amongst all-girls schools, it doesn't take into account that a lot of all-girls schools tend to be middle-class areas, and disproportionately fee-paying schools are single-gender. Okay. So it's not just about the gender issue about performing better academically. It's also about there's a lot more at play.
Yeah, we got a tweet in here. Segregated education is an anachronism, perpetuates gender stereotypes, and is a legacy of religious control of education. Larry, what do you make of that?
Well, I don't agree. The first point I would make is that the statistics are all over the shop on this. You'll find statistics to say just about anything when it comes to single-sex schools or mixed schools. They're all over the place. So I wouldn't put a huge amount of stock into that. In terms of it being a relic of religion, the reality is in the United States, the growth in single-sex schools and the growth in demand among parents for single-sex schools has been extraordinary. And that has been in the public school system in the United States, which is not faith-based whatsoever. And intriguingly, it has been most pronounced in areas of social and economic deprivation, particularly in areas of the urban United States. where parents feel that this is a better option for some of their kids. And I think the point I just need to keep coming back to is this is not for everyone. Obviously, there are experiences for every child and every young person that they can thrive in, but it shouldn't be banned. That's my real difficulty is why should we ban it?
At schools reflecting wider society and being diverse places and being places where conversations can be had about the way society should be, shouldn't a boy be sitting next to a girl as they would when they maybe go on to college, as they might in the workplace, as they may in life in general, instead of it being this artificial environment, essentially, that may suit a child if they're a little bit shy around the opposite sex, but for the greater good, it's not ideal.
But it may suit an awful lot, especially at that age. And I can speak from experience here when I went to secondary school. At that tender age, at that awkward age, where there's lots of stuff going on for boys and for girls, certainly from my point of view, it was a better experience. And let me put it this way. We go to school 6 hours a day, about 180 days a year. We're around the opposite sex all the time. I mentioned before, we're taught by teachers of the opposite sex in single-sex boys and girls schools.
That's just one teacher. That's one woman in a class of, say, 30 boys.
That may be true, but what about outside of school, where indeed in my own experience, we fostered relationships between all girls and all boys schools. There was all sorts of activities. Outside of school hours, it was the mere 6 hours. Again, when we're going through a very difficult stage, a trying stage, for some of us, not for all of us, but for some of us, we preferred to be segregated for those 6 hours when we could focus strictly on learning, and some of the other distractions or other things that come about because of that tender age weren't in the equation.
Okay, just on this on a very practical basis, if we're looking at sort of changing the culture around that and having more mixed schools, you're saying that's been something that the Department of Education have been thinking about now for 25 years.
But they don't give any recognition to any new school that is single gender. So what we were suggesting in the Labour Party is that perhaps we need a period of time to allow for schools to have these conversations themselves in their own school communities. Every dynamic in every community is different. Are you saying that schools that are currently single-sex schools should maybe look at mixing with the local girls' school, mixing with the local boys' school to make it a mixed environment? I think the Department of Education needs to create their environment over a period of time, and we could be talking about 10 years, maybe 15 years, to have an ambition that particularly at primary level we would phase it out. I don't think there's any argument at all. I understand about the dynamics of second level being slightly different. But look, we've gone along. There was a time there was an argument that African Americans were, learned better by themselves, or in the Irish context that travellers learned better by themselves, or that children with disabilities learned better by themselves. We have an obsession in Ireland with segregating children on the basis of religion, on the basis of gender, on the basis of income in certain circumstances. So what I would say is that I think it has to be a very, very, very robust argument for keeping children separate. Doing it on the basis of gender doesn't stack up, but what the department can do is create the environment that encourages schools to come together to think about how they can foster a future together in a gender equal way, because this is the argument now about gender equality and how best can we do it in our school communities, in that school environment, in that learning environment together.
Somebody makes that point, people learn differently. It's not boys or girls, people learn differently, so the environment isn't necessarily better for one gender or another.